passe l'artiste. Super, encore un but sensationnel. 25 points. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello everyone and welcome to the Uninformed Handball Hour. It's me, Chris O'Reilly, joined by Brian Cappian.
Hello, Chris. It's good to be back. It's been a few weeks since I've been on again.
Yeah, we've missed you, Brian. And you're here, but Alex is not. Alex is away in Costa Rica, researching, doing some scouting for Berta Servas in Costa Rica, looking for the next big handball talent and enjoying some coffee while he's out there.
I think it always stings a little bit more when you see people on Instagram posting pictures of their holiday when winter is just starting here, and I think that always burns a bit.
Yeah,
a bit more. And he's in Costa Rica. He's not even in Europe, so that's also a kick in the teeth. So not jealous at all.
Pretty sweet gig. Pretty sweet holiday he's got going there. And we won't be alone. We are going to be joined later on to talk about the Women's EHF Champions League by Adrian Costeiu. Adrian was also in Egypt for the first wheelchair handball world championship. So maybe we'll ask him a few questions about that. Because I saw some of the content over the weekend from that championship in Egypt, and it seems like they've adopted beach handball rules for it, where spin shots also count for 2 points. And I don't know if you saw that video of one of the players spinning around, doing a 360 on his wheelchair before scoring. I don't know if it was the IHF social media having a laugh, calling it a 2-pointer, but the scoring seems to be beach handball anyway, so maybe it is that way. We'll find out for sure from Adrian and get his impression of that first championship. But we'll talk a little bit about the EHF Champions League in the men's side and a few of the leagues going on. It's also a national team week for the women because the Euro is coming up soon. It's only just over a month away, Brian, and we're off to the Women's EHF Euro.
Yeah, it's incredible. It just feels like all of us, we'd know handball for so long, and now it's all packed into the next few weeks. Yeah, but we're, of course, really looking forward to it. And, of course, for us as the podcast, we'll be especially looking forward to it because we once again will be the official podcast for the championship.
Yo!
So we're all buzzed about that. And we hope this time... I mean, I think we had with pretty good coverage the last few times, but now we should be pretty good at this stage. So I think you can expect extra good coverage on site from all of us. I'll be located in North Macedonia and then in Ljubljana. And you, Chris, you'll be...
I'll be in Celje enjoying some smooth Lashko beer and doing some work.
Not too many
doing
now.
Some work as well. And then,
in that order.
And then the Lashko in the morning, commentating in the evening. And then Ljubljana for the main round onwards. And we'll all end up in Ljubljana by the end of the championship and doing some live podcasts as well. And we've got a few pre-championship podcasts as we've done the last couple of times as well, and some interesting names lined up. We'll reveal them as they come. So we'll have a bit of pre-championship content. It feels very early to be talking about this. It's still September, but with the Women's Euro being pushed back to November because of the Football World Cup in December, it means that everything is coming on very thick and fast. But we'll speak about some club stuff first of all. And we've both been doing a bit of Champions League. We've been out and about. We were in Kiel in the first round and looked like when we saw Kiel playing Elverum in that first game of the season that they were looking as good as they have in a while. But then they go and lose to the home of that lovely Lashko beer, Celje, in round 2, in one of the biggest shocks of the competition. It's only 2 rounds deep, but 38-36, Celje beating Kiel. Which, let's be honest here, I think when we looked at that group and saw that Celje was in there, that we thought they were going to be the Zagreb of this season, but already proving us wrong.
I tuned into that game briefly at the beginning and I saw 8-4 Kiel. I was like, okay, I'm not going to watch this. I'll tune out here. Probably the worst decision I've ever made, because after that, I think it was one man in particular, Alex Vlad, who came up popped up. I think he scored, was it 7 goals in 15 minutes? So, I mean, I'll have to go back and watch those 15 minutes again, but I saw the highlights and some of his goals were pretty incredible. And I think he's probably a guy that's not on many people's radar. Obviously, been around the scene for quite a while now. He's 25 years of age, and he's scored 17 goals so far this season. And he played for Zagreb a few seasons ago, and his total goals over the whole season was 20. So he's only 3 away from breaking his own personal record. So he's on his way to his best season ever. If all he needs to do is score 4 more goals, then he'll have beaten the record. But it was quite the incredible performance, really, wasn't it? Gal Gabrishek in goal obviously had a good performance as well. He kind of was instrumental in kind of giving them that lead. I think it was 15-11. And I think it's just great to see that, because as you said, going into the season, we saw Celje in there and it just felt a bit like, poor Celje. But having had a decent performance against Aalborg in the first round, they didn't win it, obviously. They lost by, it was a 3 or 4, I think, was it? 3 or 4 goals. But had a decent performance. I think you can see there they were better than expected, and then to beat Kiel at home is just going to give them huge confidence going into the rest of their home games, especially. So that's going to be great to see it. But I think Celje have always been a club that seemed to have had German clubs' number in terms of pulling off a surprise in previous seasons. And when we look back, that'd be the second time they've had, because I think when Celje beat a German side, it's always unexpected, because I don't want to sound obviously too degrading towards Celje as a club, but they are kind of seen as some kind of like a feeder club to the bigger clubs, that they have these civilian talents that they then eventually just sell on to some of the bigger clubs, a bit like, maybe not as big as Ajax, but something like Ajax in football, where they develop this talent and it kind of just is farmed out then to the bigger clubs. But in the last 5 seasons, they have beaten Flensburg twice, Kiel now twice, and then Rhein-Neckar Löwen. So they'd have something in their locker when it comes to beating German teams, and they seem to give German teams a bit of a headache.
Wow, it's really interesting. I didn't know that was their record against German teams in the last few years. That's very impressive. And I mean, just looking at the way they played and the way they managed to tear open that Kiel defense, just the movement. Alex Sola was brilliant at that. I mean, he just kept moving. Like, it was very Slovenian in a way. They just managed to keep going until the gap appeared, or riding the challenges from the defense very well. And you just know how much that would really irritate Philipp Jicha as well. We saw that on Sunday in the Bundesliga game they played, like how different the defense was, and how focused on it they were, because them conceding 38 goals when Kiel celebrate the fact that they've such a flexible and strong defense is a real kick in the arse for them. So, yeah, great result for Celje. And I don't know if I don't want to make any predictions now. It's only 2 rounds in, whether that shakes things up in what is a ridiculously tough Group B. Like Aalborg, Barca, Kiel, Kielce, Nantes, Szeged, and then it's Celje and Elverum, who we all thought would be languishing at the bottom. Elverum are currently languishing at the bottom, but Celje pulling off a result like that is definitely going to make some of these other teams worry that they're going to be in trouble here. And in particular, Szeged, who have now lost their opening 2 games, lost the important one to Nantes as well. But this group is, it's going to be fun, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a strange one with Szeged, isn't it, really? It feels like they lost their momentum at a certain point last season, and then it seems like they've, seems to have lost their mojo. I don't know if you have any insight there on that.
Well, I was there for that playoff game they lost to Flensburg, where, it just seemed like they were missing something, where they never really put up that challenge they were supposed to. And they had an opportunity to win that game, would have got them into a quarterfinal, and then anything can happen. But that's a long time ago. And in the first half against Barca in round 1, they weren't that bad. They were leading, I think, weren't they, by a goal at halftime. I mean, they definitely have the players. Something we talked about last year was them maybe being a little one-dimensional in the backcourt, with the likes of Bodo and Tunnison and Maćkovšek, in the way that they play left and right back. and they maybe need to switch things around a little bit. But they were caught out by Barca. Looked okay again for the first half against Nantes, but at a certain point, as Nantes tend to do in the Champions League, they just, towards the end of the first half, beginning of the second half, just turned things around, and they ended up getting a fairly comfortable 5-goal win. It's really early, of course, but it's not going to get much easier for Szeged. Like, their next game this week is away to Kiel, and then they're at home to Aalborg, and then at home to Elverum in round 5, which is the first one where you're really looking at them thinking, okay, they can pick up a couple of points here, but then it's almost halfway through the group phase.
But one team which I'm looking at as well, who I'm a little bit concerned about and maybe shocked that they don't look a little bit better, maybe is Elverum. I don't know if it's the fact that they completely overperformed in other seasons, but I think the first 2 games haven't been great for them. And they're away to Nantes now in the next round. I think that's going to be a very tough, as Bjorn Patson would say, a tough nut to crack. Grundal, for example, I think hasn't looked like he's up to speed quite yet from what I saw when I saw him in Kiel. And I don't know, what do you think? Do you think it's maybe they're this is their actual level and they've maybe played out of their socks previously, or is it too soon to call?
Yeah, I mean, they've signed a whole new bunch of players. It's kind of the problem for them is that when they play as well as they did last season, that their best players like Erik Johansson has moved on to Kiel, and Dominic Mathé has moved on to PSG. And so it's like, they've got a lot of rebuilding to do, and they are a bit like Celje in that sense. They build up these players, they move on to bigger teams, and then they scout for the Norwegian and the Swedish talents. And it's not they're not automatically going to click and be able to compete at that level straight away. So I think it's going to take them a little bit more time. I don't think overall they are as strong as last season. Grundal, I think, will take a bit more time. He's finally been called up to the Norwegian national team, which is good. It's only taken a couple of years.
But now his confidence is shot, and he's like, it's too much pressure.
So I think they'll need a bit of time. I mean, I'm pretty sure as soon as they saw that draw for the group phase this season, they were like, okay, let's just, like last season, they were definitely aiming for a playoff spot. This year, of course, they're aiming for it, but I think they're gonna see what they can take this time around and not put too much pressure on themselves. For them, I guess those games against Nantes and against Szeged, against Celje is where they'll try to pick up some points.
I think we can't talk about, obviously, the Men's Champions League without talking about a game which a lot of people were looking forward to. Obviously, it was a replay of last season's final, and you were there, obviously, in Barcelona for Barcelona versus Kielce. Did it live up to the expectation, first of all, for you?
I enjoyed it, yeah. I mean, it was a little bit one-sided in the end, maybe a bit more than people expected, but goodness me, how good are Barca? Like, it's sickening that after 2 seasons winning the competition that they've actually gone and gotten themselves a better team this time around. That is really worrying for everyone else. The game was good. The quality of the game was good. Kielce a couple of times looked like they were going to come back into it. They were the second best team for the majority of the game, and the attack was left a little bit wanting in the first half thanks to one man. He's back in the Champions League, Le Grand Fromage himself, Emil Nielsen. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but then I saw some people write online about Le Grand Fromage, and I was like, okay. Do you know what the Spanish or the Catalan is for that, Brian?
No,
I don't either.
So you're asking me the question. Oh God, El Queso Grande.
El Queso Grande. Should I look it up? That sounds like the Spanish one. That's for sure.
My Catalan's not the sharpest now, but I presume that a few of those words would be correct. Grande, anyway, I presume.
El Gran Formaggio. Formaggio?
Oh, yeah. Not too far.
Yeah. Yeah, the great cheese. I put in as the direct translation. So yeah. But anyway,
well, I mean, obviously he's a huge signing, and I think a lot of people will be excited to see him playing for a club like Barca when he can get that huge protection of the Barcelona, the classic Barcelona defence. But I was surprised to hear that he was starting over Perez de Vargas, obviously, who's a legend of the club. And it wasn't. I didn't expect that. I think, were you surprised when you saw him walking on with starting 7?
I was a little bit. I thought maybe, the plan here with him is maybe to throw him in often and early to get him in there, and then you have a great number 2 of Gonzalo Perez de Vargas to come in if necessary, which he did in the second half and pulled off 4 saves. And I actually spoke to Victor Tomas about this before the game because we were sitting basically side by side. He was commentating with local TV, and he's not so sure about it all. He's not 100% sure if having 2 number 1 goalkeepers is the way to go for these people. Both are fairly big personalities in their own way. Both are used to being the number 1. Like Gonzalo Perez de Vargas was brilliant in the last 2 seasons because he knew he was the number 1. And now it's a different situation. I think Gonzalo would be fine with it. I mean, he's also with the Spanish team had Rodrigo Corrales in there, and still he's the number 1, but he's got another guy who's used to being the number 1 beside him. So I think they'll be fine. I still see it as a good problem to have for them. But for a game like that, maybe they figured that. Also, Emil Nielsen has an amazing record against Kielce. Right, some of his biggest days in a Nantes jersey were against Kielce, and so maybe he's in their heads a little bit. He's certainly in Talent Dushabayev's head. That's for sure. And so, maybe it wasn't such a big deal for him to come in. Besides that, just the team look very good. Like the signings they've brought in. Nielsen, Karlsbogård is just, he needs to shoot a little more, but that's always the case with him, I think. But he's an amazingly calm presence in the backcourt where you have a bunch of guys who are just, if it was up to them, they'd probably shoot from 12 meters nonstop. And so he's great in there. Hampus Vanna as well. Him and Alex Gomez as 2 of the best counter-attacking wingers. Very good position for Barca to be in. And it's funny with Kielce, for all the
opposite.
But for all the talk we had about them buying all these left backs, and they only had 1 left back in the team, and that was Szymon Siczko, because Steenmalm is out injured at the moment. They've sent Kulesh, Vladislav Kulesh, out to Hanover. So they're a bit, and Halil Ganyac is off to Rhein-Neckar Leuven on loan. So not so deep in the backcourt really.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see all the Frenchies on the Barcelona side all having great games. You had Fabregas, he had 6, Mem had 5, N'Gusson had 4, and then you had Remeli 1 from 7 for Kielce, Dylan Nahi 1 from 2, Konku, I think he had 2. So in terms of the battle of the Frenchies there, it was definitely Barca that came out on top. So I think Barcelona will be delighted with that. 12 saves for Emil Nielsen. And that double penalty save was just classic.
Oh, gosh, it was good.
Momentum feeding Nielsen,
Yeah.
When we talked to him on the podcast before, we were talking about different types of goalkeepers and what type of style is he. I think it was Alex asked the question, but he was saying there's a lot of goalkeepers that feed off the momentum and they kind of almost grow into the game. Super Saiyan style, like Dragon Ball Z. And that double penalty save was just one of the biggest highlights. And I felt it was quite nice. And Hampus Vanna scored the goal that kind of sealed the deal for them. It was kind of a nice cherry on top for their signing department.
Yeah. It was their first home game in the Champions League for those guys, the new players. So, Emil Nielsen was loving it. He was, he's looking... He's definitely, his outer persona has definitely grown in the last couple of years as well. Like he was lapping it up in the crowd, looking fit as well. So all things looking good. And
Luis Frade got a red card, so he'll be delighted with that.
It was the most Luis Frade red card he's ever gotten, and the referees didn't even wait. They just went straight red card. We don't need to think about this. Like, that's clearly a red card.
You can be so dirty sometimes.
Besides that, a great atmosphere as well. The the Ultras have returned to Barca games. So that's a real boost. And they were on their feet for the entire 60 minutes. Helped create a very nice atmosphere. So, yeah, big European nights seem to be returning to the Catalan capital. All right, so that's plenty on Group B. We'll save some Aalborg chat until Alex comes back in the pod. He can wax lyrical about Miguel Hansen. Over in Group A, only 2 teams have perfect records. That's Magdeburg, who've had it fairly straightforward so far, and Veszprem. Have you seen any of these teams in action in Group A?
I saw bits of Veszprem, and I think it's looking pretty good for them. And I think they seem to be flying high at the moment. I think some of their signings seem to fit in very well. I think Bjarki looks great on the wing. I think he's in terms of personality as well. I think he's a perfect fit for a team like Veszprem. So it seems to be that there's a good vibe over there at the moment.
Worrying signs for Porto, I have to say. I spoke a little bit to Marcio Menino about this last week after they lost their first game to Płock and lost at home there to Veszprem. Different team for them in comparison to the last few years, and you just need to look at the squad, and it's all of a sudden got a very Scandinavian feel to it. It seems like Magnus Andersson has managed to get a few signings that he wanted, but in Marcio's eyes, there's a bit of a clash of culture, maybe in the way that the guys who come in, like Nikolai Lesa and Jack Doreen, who do 2 very good signings, just maybe clashing a little bit in terms of how they play compared to the Portuguese guys. So maybe they'll need a bit more time to settle into things. Zagreb doing what Zagreb do. 2 defeats so far. And I only saw their game against Georgi, which they lost at home. Dinamo Bucuresti, I think, looking pretty good. They managed to get a point away to Georgi, which is very good going. That was 38-38, 21-20 at halftime. So Georgi are continuing what they did last season in the European League, just scoring ridiculous amounts of goals. And conceding ridiculous amount of goals as well. It's a nice addition.
It's not a GOG game if you're not scoring or conceding 35 goals plus.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. It's a nice addition. I think I will like Group A for this reason, with the teams like Georgi, Dinamo Bucuresti, and also Wisla Płock, who are your favorite team, Brian. I think we've, at least for me, my opinion on them has changed over the last couple of years. I think we're not afraid to say that a couple of years ago we saw them as kind of a retirement home for Veszprem players, but they have shifted a lot in the last couple of years, and they've got Sergei Kosarotov in there, Lovro Mihic, Mikhail Dazcek, Tin Lucene as well, Zhitnikov. Just a lot of exciting players in there. Mirsad Terzic is still in there, and Daniel Sarmiento has come out of retirement to join them. So there's still a little bit of the old Płock in there, the old school Płock. Christian Polipovic has joined them as well over the summer. But they seem to be, they've been knocking on the door of the Champions League for a couple of seasons, and they seem to have settled in quite well, managing to beat Porto. And then they pushed PSG pretty hard, losing 37-33 as well. Yeah,
I do like what they're doing a lot over in Płock. And yeah, as you said, we have been harsh in the past, but I think probably that has possibly been a strategy of the club. I don't know what kind of cycle they have planned in terms of transfers, but it seemed like they wanted to get a few big names in, marquee signings, which are maybe past it a little bit to a certain extent, which then might lead then to be able to sign younger talent, which that younger talent then has turned into being able to sign more current hot talent at the moment. So I think it's a great club, and I do like Xabi Zabate a lot as a coach. He's probably the most painful loss in handball history. So I think I'll always have a soft spot for him after his time in Veszprem, losing that final against Kielce, of course. But yeah, it's good to see they're making moves over there. I like what they're doing, and I think their real home is the Champions League. But I think there's probably another team from Group A which we should talk about is probably PSG.
Yes.
Because PSG, obviously, were making a lot of moves in the summer. They've probably have with Green and Palika in goal, probably one of the best goalkeeping duos you could have in handball. And there's been a lot of changes. They've kept obviously the likes of Luke Stein, which I think there was maybe some whispers of him leaving, but then he signed a new deal, so it was good to see him staying there, because I think a lot of people like the look of Luke Steins with PSG. But they have been maybe not as unplayable in the French league as in past seasons, because they did lose to Phoenix Toulouse, which was, when you look at the Phoenix Toulouse squad going into that game, you think there's nothing really there's nothing really outstanding. They didn't make any marquee signings or any big huge signings during the summer, but they didn't make any massive signings in the summer. Of course, you have people like Nemanja Ilic. So you look at the squad there, and you don't think they have the quality to hockey PSG, and they did pretty much hockey PSG. You can go back. The league have a great highlights package of there. It's 6 minutes long.
Yeah.
You can watch all the highlights.
It's a good length for highlights, I think, 6 minutes.
Yeah, we did some interviews at the end, and I don't have a clue what they're saying, but if I spoke French, I'd probably enjoy it. But yeah, it's a good little highlights package there, and it shows you that they just really played them off the court. Really, it was quite incredible, and especially Jeff Letton's in goal. I think he had an incredible second half, and maybe one of the most underrated goalkeepers I think out there, because I've been watching him in the European League obviously all last season, and he is a guy that I think you can really rely on, and maybe because he's not German or Swedish, people don't get too hyped about him, but he is an excellent goalkeeper, and he showed that in the second half with some of his saves.
Any player who's played handball in Dublin, as Jeff Lettons has with Belgium against us, has a soft spot in my mind. And yeah, 40% saver, 16 saves, Jeff Lettons. Some of them were brilliant as well. A few big penalty saves, and I just like the way that they play Phoenix, and they are a club that have over the years been willing to sign players that are not, obvious like international stars. I think Erwin Feuchtmann is a great example of that. That's the former team of Luke Steins as well. You remember, so and they've replaced him with a similarly speedy centre back who's almost just as short as well, but also Nemanja Ilic in there doing. He's a player who you feel like he had that short time in Barca when he filled in for the Final Four for them, but it feels like he should have been playing Champions League for a few years, but for whatever reason has just been happy to stay or hasn't been picked up. And yeah, they were really good in that game. Worrying signs for PSG though, but it's nice to see that there's a new team at the top of the French league, even after only 3 rounds. And it's not with 3 victories, including beating Montpellier last week or the week before last, who were top. And I don't know, PSG, that you mentioned there, the best goalkeeper duo with Yannick Grain and Andreas Pelika, but neither of them delivering just yet. And even in that win over Płock in the Champions League last week, just 4 saves from 37 shots between the two of them. So, yeah, worrying times. I think you would assume that both of them will come into form. But the reason why you sign 2 goalkeepers is like that is that one of them will always deliver. And that's not been the case yet.
It's a funny position, obviously, goalkeeping, because you're working so closely with the other goalkeeper. I mean, you don't see left backs, for example, walking over to the other left backs when they have a moment to get there. But with goalkeepers, the goalkeepers go straight over to each other, hand each other water. So there's obviously a lot of synergy there between goalkeepers, and whether it's the fact that maybe they haven't found that yet between each other, they will come good because they're 2 excellent goalkeepers. But yeah, a bit of a bumpy start for both of them, and I think the club itself probably expected them to get off to a flying start, and they haven't. But they are 2 of the best, top 5 goalkeepers in the world, so they should come good. And Yannick Green's just a lovely man.
So, with that, we'll move on to the Women's EHF Champions League. And to talk about that, we've brought in Adrian Costeiu.
Adrian Costeiu, welcome back to the podcast. How you doing?
It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
I'm honored once again. Yeah, we've also. I think the last one was the Euro.
Exactly.
2020. So basically, a lot has happened since this moment, both in the world and in handball. So yeah, I'm pretty good right now, and I've enjoyed handball in the start of the season.
Yeah, now you've done something a bit different as well. You've just come back from Egypt, where you're at the first wheelchair handball world championship. What did you think of that?
Yeah, it was very nice. I think having handball develop as a sport in all disciplines is very nice, and everything went well there. I've seen some great action there. It was beautiful. It looked like players were doing everything they could for their countries, which is always nice. And maybe some of indoor handball should do the same. I won't say in which countries, but yeah, it was amazing. Like Brazil won the title, but Brazil have had this program developed since 2005, while Egypt, the other finalists who lost in a shootout, only founded their team with 1 month prior to the tournament. So
wow,
yeah, it was pretty amazing. So everybody did the best they could. So I really think that this type of handball has a future, and it's always nice to see. I don't know, all the projects done, even in beach handball, even in you're more a specialist than I am in beach handball. That's for sure. But also in wheelchair handball in the Netherlands, there is walking handball. I've seen that EHF also has like the Circle of Life, which is pretty amazing because only in this situation can handball develop throughout all of the world.
And you mentioned there the shootout, and that's why we were wondering, Brian and I, just before you came on, whether they did adopt basically like beach handball rules, right? So 2 sets and then a shootout. If it was one set each.
It was 2 sets, then a tiebreaker, 5-minute tiebreaker, and then they were tied. Basically, Egypt tied with a spin shot with 3 seconds left on the clock. So they went to a shootout then, and they started from the half court and then scored or tried to score on the 7-meter line.
Oh, really interesting. So you mentioned the spin as well. That was the other question that you got there ahead, because there was one video in particular which I think did very well online from Open Play. Was a spin of the wheelchair and a shot, and that, similar to beach handball, is worth 2 points, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also in four-side wheelchair handball, it's double the points, and it really throws like something that you can't predict in the game, because Egypt really tied the game in the final in the tiebreaker with 3 seconds left, like I told you before. So it really changed the dynamics of the game. So I think it's pretty nice to see. The effort is really big to do a spin in that moment, in crucial moments. But it's really changed the dynamics. So it throws a bit of unpredictability in the game. Yeah. And
it's mixed gender as well, right?
You need to have one woman on the court. Yeah. In the fourth side, you need to have at least one woman on the court. The Netherlands had 2 during large chunks of the games, but you need to have one woman on the court all the time.
Oh, super interesting. So you were pleased with your experience of it, and happy to see more.
Yeah, because like I told you, while there were growing pains and mistakes, the teams really wanted it. So teams like India, for example, or Egypt, they really, really wanted it. Even Slovenia managed to come back from difficult moments. Chile played their hearts out, and Brazil, they were like this well-oiled machine, and they didn't drop a set until the final. Wow. So because their experience was pretty high in this competition. So I think they really deserved it. but all the teams are winners in my eyes, because it's really nice to see this.
Nice.
It's like basically the joy of the children who are starting to play handball, and it's very nice.
Nice. Well, that's a very positive start for the sport on a world level, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of it. And the other main reason we've got you in is because Bucharest.
Romanian teams have been very good in the Champions League.
Bucharest has taken over the handball, not just Romania, but Bucharest is the center of the Champions League universe, with 3 teams in the 2 Champions League competitions. And I'm particularly interested in getting your perspective on the 2 women's teams who, well, Chesame, you've covered in so much detail over the last few years. And then we have a new contender in Rapid Bucharest. Dinamo Bucuresti are signing a bunch of really interesting players and have had a positive start, I think, to the men's competition. How does it feel to be the center of the Champions League universe?
Well, it's nice to see 2 Romanian teams, especially doing so good, because when Romania had 2 teams in the Champions League, they weren't doing so good, both of them. But right now, a lot of money has been invested, and I must stress this is public money. CSMA is the team from the local mayorship and local council. Rapid is the team of the Ministry of Transport, and Dynamo is the Interior Ministry. So this is public money, like every other team in the Romanian league, in the men's and in the women. So all teams are funded by local authorities or state authorities. Leaving that aside, it's pretty nice to see 2 Romanian teams. CSMA has been a powerhouse in the last few years, so it's only logical that they are doing good. But Rapid has been a very nice story in the last years. They're a very old team. The club is celebrating 100 years this season. But in handball, there have been ups and downs. The teams are quite. CSMA was born basically from Rapid's ashes. The coach and a lot of players moved from Rapid to CSMA when they didn't have any money. But then Rapid was back in the fold. They went in the first league, relegated to the second, and now I think it was 2018 when they or 19 when they got promoted again. And now they have the money, so they brought in a Spanish coach, the former Spain's women's national team coach Carlos Viver, and then brought a lot of players, Spanish players, which are the base of the team with the Romanian ones, and then now there are plenty of French players like Lacaber, Canor, good transfers. The only thing is that they didn't start the season so well, because the expectations are very high now from them, because last season they were underdogs, but they managed to snatch the title. The main idea is, and that's also a thing that Vâlcea, Secime Râmnicu Vâlcea learned on their own skin, is that winning the title doesn't mean that you are building a dynasty, because you don't have European games in that season. And when you do add European games, like in the Champions League, you have like 14 games in the group phase, and then maybe other 2 in the playoffs, another 2 in the quarterfinals, you'll have like 18 games, which is a lot, because Romanian teams don't use charter planes like Gior. And to reach, I don't know, Metz, Kristiansand, Odense, other, even Gior, other teams to play the away games, then you'll have to do a stopover, because it's impossible to fly from Bucharest to other cities like that in direct flights. So CSMF, for example, in the game against Brest, in the second round, there was an air traffic control flight in France, and then they reached Brest at 5:30 a.m. in the day of the game.
Yeah, so, I saw that. I saw their arrival early in the morning. Not ideal preparation.
They had like 12 hours, I think, a trip from Paris to Brest, which was very difficult, but they played very good. But then they played Vâlcea in the Romanian league, which is a very tough game to play. And then they played against Bietigheim, and they drew. So you'll be tired. This is what's happening with Rapid. The team isn't playing very good in the Romanian league. They lost the Romanian Super Cup against CSM, but they started the season good in the Champions League. However, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, they played two of the worst teams in the competition so far in the away games. And they drew against Metz. That was a very good result because they proved they can come back. But tougher games will follow, so it will be very interesting to see how they cope with the schedule in the next months. This is the main question for me right now. But of course, having 5 points and leading the group after 3 games, it's the best they could hope for. So maybe they would have liked 6 points, but playing against Mets, which have a lot of experience in the competition, is like it's very difficult to win because you are a team that you have little to no experience as a team in the competition.
And we've spoken a lot about Rapid there in particular. Chesimé are always an interesting kind of you never really know what you're going to get from an outside perspective. Maybe even if from an insider perspective, you don't know exactly what you're going to get each season from them. But at least in these opening rounds, they look as well set as they've been for quite a while.
Yes, I think it's for a number of reasons. First of all, they brought in Zadi, which is a huge transfer for them because they lacked that firepower at the 9-meter line. One issue, however, is that they don't have attacking left-handed right back, which could prove difficult in the end of the season because teams will prepare for that. Omorege is now playing there. Klikovac, who is mainly a defender, also is kind of like the only experienced right back, left-handed right back. They also have Alicia Gugerla, but she's 21 and doesn't have a lot of experience. So what really happened is, I think, Cristina Neagu, which is the main player and the top goal scorer of the last season, I wouldn't say that she took a step back, but she is now surrounded by better players, which enables her to don't take any shots needed to end the attack.
Yeah.
So that's very important for both Chesame and Nagu. Nagu has a very long injury history. She had 2 ACL tears and a very, very bad shoulder injury, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And she's 34 now, so she can't play the way she did play in her youth and in her prime. But the team that Chesame really managed to pull together is very good. The connection between Nagu and Pinta is also very interesting. Pinta was selected like the best line player in the round, and she plays very, very good. And she knows Nagu very well. Nagu knows her also very well, so that enables them to use the line player for 3, 4, 5 times in a game, which really throws off the opposing defense. So I think that's a very good start of the season for Chesame, but they still lack something a bit on the line player position. Like Ramušović isn't the same quality as Pinta, at least that's in my eyes and in the start of this season. But also their depth is not quite as big as they would have liked to. But there were internal turmoil at the team, a new manager and a new sporting director, let's say, came, Cristina Verzaru, who was the Secretary General of the Romanian Handball Federation. But they came in late. So after they came in, they couldn't bring nobody. So this is the team, but at least the start looks way better from what we saw from them in the last 3-4 years, because they look more like a team, which is very important because they were very Nagu-centric. Let's put it like this in the past years.
And particularly given the group they have, which overall seems quite strong. You've got really 7 teams that feel they will be good enough to get through to the next round. There's only room for 6 though, and then you've got a bit of a whipping team there in Banik Most. There's been quite a few one-sided victories I've noticed in these opening rounds, although it seems to be not on a regular basis with every team, but there's been a few also surprise hammerings when you look at what happened to FTC against Biederheim the other week.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see Ferencváros playing like that. It was their worst loss in history in the Champions League, so that was huge. 20 goals, it's enormous, and I've spoken with Beatrice Edvige, their line player and their all-star defender, let's put it like this, for an interview with EHF, and she said that they needed to get back and to give back to the fans who went with them in Germany. However, they did not make it, and the game against Brest started by 4-0 for the French team, and it was very difficult to come back in this type of situation, especially if you're not a very, very good attack, which Ferencváros is not right now. And they only scored 19 goals, which is pretty little for a team in the Champions League. And Jaukovic scored 12 goals for Brest, and then Darleux scored saved 21 shots, which is immense in any game. So she had like 43 or 44%. So yeah, Ferencváros need to sort out their mess a bit because they look very shaky right now, and every game counts in the Champions League because you don't know who you will get in the knockout phase, in the playoffs or in the quarterfinals, and they really want to make it to Budapest. It would be playing at home, and their fans would cheer for them like crazy. So they would have a big advantage there. But I think they need to clean up their mess and be better, at least in attack, because also in defense, when you concede 40 goals in a game, it's a lot. But in attack, scoring 39 goals in 2 consecutive games, you can't win in this situation.
Yeah. And next up for them is a really tricky one, away to Krim, who really broke their hearts last year with the mid-season arrivals and a game which already looks like it could be crucial in terms of not just a good position in the knockout rounds, but getting to the knockout rounds. Elsewhere in Group A, we mentioned Biederheim, who have been really impressive on most fronts, and definitely in terms of goal scoring, and Vipers, who somehow just seem to be able to pick up really good players when it seems like there might be in a bit of trouble. They managed to pull out Anna Viakareva and are top of the group so far. What has stood out for you in Group A?
Of course, Biederheim, because it's always nice to see the transition from a second-tier competition to the first-tier competition in European handball, because Biederheim are now like they have 58 wins and 1 draw in the last 59 games, dating back to March 2021. Wow. So that's huge for them. But they played in the European League where teams are not as good as in the Champions League. But in the first matches, they were like very, very good, especially when they beat Ferencváros 40-20, double the amount of goals. It's very difficult to find. I think there have been like 6 or 7 games in which teams have won by 20 goals plus in the history of the competition, and then going to Bucharest and leading by 4 goals, then getting the tables turned 2 goals down, and then come back. It's very difficult to do that in a packed arena in Bucharest against a very experienced team. So I think it's difficult for them to try and do these kind of things on a regular basis. But they are undefeated right now after 3 games. Their schedule hasn't been at all easy. The game against Ferencváros was the match of the week. And they really kept their core of the team. They lost like 2 or 3 players. They replaced them. But the team still looks like it doesn't have enough depth. So if there are injuries, it will be interesting to see how they cope with them. But right now, in how they look, they're very, very good. That transition, I think, was seamless. Regarding Vipers, the team was built on a Norwegian identity first, and they had like a lot of Norwegian players. But now it's an international team with Jerzabkova, with Viahireva, with Jamina Roberts. So Knedlikova also on the right wing. So I think it's very, very interesting to see how they managed to pull this coup and then everything coming together. They were very good last season in the Final Four. I think they deserved the trophy no matter what. Hands down, they were the best team in Budapest. And right now they're playing a very, very good brand of handball. It will be interesting to see, looking to the next season, because Ole Gustav Gekstad will leave the team. It will be very interesting to see how they cope with that. Because changing players is one thing, changing the coach is another one. But it's, I would say it's your levels of domination in the Champions League women right now for Vipers.
That's really interesting, considering how early in the season it is, because they've kind of taught us the last couple of seasons that they're a team that have built up to it and then peaked at the right time. But already getting a stamp of approval like that from you says a lot about them. And yeah, interesting what you said about Bietigheim there. They only have 15 players in the squad. You'd be worried that maybe they turn into a bit of a team Esbjerg if they don't, if they get a couple of injuries and end up with 8 players. So
that will be difficult. This is what I'm thinking, and I cannot wait to see when this streak is gonna be over, because it's an amazing streak put together over the Bundesliga, the German Cup, and in the European League last season they won every game in the European League, like 13 games. So that's not easy at all, especially with the program. And so the team was also, I wouldn't say depleted, but they lacked the numbers. But what they have in quality is something great. And the cohesion of the team, a very good job done by Markus Gaugic, who is also the coach of the German women's national team now.
Yeah, and interesting to see how he gets on in the coming months with the Euro coming up. You just mentioned a streak there, and one big streak came to an end over the weekend as Djur lost at home, and that was quite a loss as well. I watched the entire match, and I don't know if you had a chance to look at it back. I know you were busy with wheelchair handball, but I wouldn't be surprised if you at least had half an eye on it at some point over the weekend.
Yeah, Oftedal didn't play, right?
Yes,
she got injured. She got injured.
Has a classic nose injury, fractured nose, so she'll be back in a couple of weeks. I don't know when she doesn't have a fractured nose though.
Yeah, playing with a mask like in football, right? Yes, she's very tough to replace, especially when you have her there. I think maybe everybody says that, oh, look, it's easy. It's Gjord. They have like 2 players on the same position. It's very easy it's not easy to replace such a player, because she is the one who dictates all the rhythm in attack and knows every defense and knows her teammates' positions and movements inside out. So I think it's very difficult to replicate that. On the other hand, Gjord have a very, very good squad, and those types of losses shouldn't happen, especially against Metz, who are now a very young team with a lot of young players. But Mayonnaise did a very good job of motivating them and having them play as a team, as a unit. So I think I don't know how to say it. Gjord basically dominated the group phase and the knockout phases of the Champions League in the last 6 or 7 years, before coming to the Final Four. And first they won, but after Ambros Martin left, they had their issues. Now Martin is back. Is he the right man to lead Gjord? Can he produce the same energy and the same respect that he had prior to him leaving? I think that's the question Gjord need to ask themselves, because something clearly is not at the best. At best there. So I think they need to analyze. They have some time. Of course, the players are now leaving for the national teams, but they need to ask themselves some questions and see what are the answers.
It's an interesting one. Djur have always been, so infallible at home, and even you think back to the games against Brest, for example, over the years, where they've always managed to find a way back to at least get a draw. And I was watching the game. It was at one point, it was like a 6 or 7 goal lead in the first half. cut back to 4 by halftime, and then you think, okay, they're going to find their way back. But then the second half, Metz seemed pretty comfortable, even when, they were clearly getting a bit nervy towards the end and they weren't able to find the goals. They still managed to get the job done in defense. And you're used to them just pulling these strings of goals together in the final 15 minutes or so. It just didn't happen for them. And yeah, full credit to Metz though. And with Bruna de Paula, Christina Jurgensen, and Louise Burgard in there, they looked comfortable in the backcourt. And
especially with Bruna now settling in after one season. She was amazing for Nantes in the European League. She was the MVP of the EHF finals 2 years ago. Yeah. But now settling in Metz, a different team, a team with different objectives, the champions of France. Now in the second season, she really started the season very, very good. She's one of the top scorers, I think, in the Champions League right now. But she has this thing that not only goals are important from her, she also sets up the other teammates so well. It's very, very nice to see. It's very difficult to find players of her quality and her qualities. To do a small joke, but she's very nice to see and very difficult to stop.
I couldn't imagine how annoying it is to play against her for an entire 60 minutes or have to face her in training every day. I think that might even be worse, but rather to face her in training, I think, than and have her on your team for matches. I guess that's the way they look at it. One last on Group B that I think is worth looking at, among many, of course, is Team Esbjerg, who have, I think, a lot of expectation coming into this season as well, with the additions, in particular Nora Merck, who slowly but surely seems to be coming into the team. Henny Reistad is doing what she's doing best, a 10-goal performance over the weekend against Budućnost. It seems like they're probably on course to repeat what they did last season. Have you seen much of them, and is there anything in particular that stands out to you about them?
I haven't seen much of them, unfortunately, but I think they are once again a very good team, a very well-coached team. Jesper Jensen is doing a very good job, both in Esbjerg and in the national team of Denmark. The way he thinks, the way he sets up his defense is very, very nice. And of course, bringing in more Merck was immense for them. If she stays healthy, then I think the pair with Reistad and with Christina Breistel will yield very good dividends in the future. This is the type of move that a team makes to improve from a very good season last season. So bringing in Merck was surely a coup for Esbjerg, and I think they will be a very tough nut to crack once they all get going. But of course, with Nora, you always hope she doesn't get injured. So I think that's very, very important for the outcome of their season.
And it's a international week at the moment. We're just 5 weeks away from the Women's EHF Euro 2022, which feels quite bizarre considering the season has just begun. You hinted a little bit at Niagu earlier, and all things set that she will be in the national team for this championship, right?
Yeah. She got back to the national team. She had a sabbatical year in 2021 because of exactly those injuries, and she said that she couldn't play anymore, and I think that was the right decision. But Romania are not that good, let's say. It's been a whirlwind. I was just doing the profile for the EHF for them, and in the last 6-7 years they changed 6 coaches. So they've changed the coach now. Romania looked quite nice at the World Championship last season. They finished 12th, but it was the normal finish because you didn't have Nagu in the team. So what they did was pick the players that played best in the Romanian league and then try to fit them into a system. Adi Vasile, who is CSMS coach, did that very good. He's like a more modern coach with a penchant for speed, high intensity. and Romania had some very good games against, for example, against the Netherlands. They missed tying the game twice in the last minute, playing 7-on-6 in attack. The right wing, Laura Mois, missed the 2 shots. But now the new coach is Florentin Pera, who was at Vâlcea, who was at CSKA Moscow, and he came back to Romania for normal reasons, let's say. And he is more like a defensive-minded coach. So another change, another face of the team, and basically it was like politics in Romanian handball. This is why he was named the coach of the team. So the group is quite difficult for Romania. The first group, in the group phase, the preliminary round, you have France, the Netherlands, and North Macedonia. So with three teams going to the main round, I think Romania will do it, but it will be very difficult against France and against the Netherlands. And if Pera manages to instill his way into the team, I would see the game against France finishing like 19-17 or something like that. But yeah, that's just a small joke. But the main thing that is very difficult for the team and for Pera right now is that they don't have much time together. They now have the Carpathian Trophy where they'll play Austria, Serbia, and Spain. 3 days, 29, 30 September and 1st of October. And then you'll have just a few weeks prior to the Euro. So it will be very difficult for him to put his ideas on paper and change the team. Also, you have Nagu. Nagu is totally the boss of the team in the Romanian national team. So she doesn't have that kind of help that she has at CSM. So many of the Romanian players are not playing or playing in weaker teams. The future, like Lorena Ostase, who is a very good line player, just recently this summer signed for Rapid because she was playing for 6 years, I think, or 7 years at Slatina, who is a team that I think they never finished in the top 10 of the league. So you have all these small problems that create a puzzle, and you'll always end up in a bad situation as Romania comes. So the last Euro they finished on the 12th spot. So that was the worst ever placement in an Euro ever for Romania, who qualified for 14 of the 15 editions of the competition. So yeah, that's the thing.
Well, we'll see if what happens this weekend changes your opinion in any way. Good that they have Miagu back, and I'm sure we'll talk more about Romania as we get closer to the championship and during the championship as well. I think that game on the 9th of November against North Macedonia is going to be pivotal. Let's see how they deal with the occasion, because I'm pretty sure with them being one of the home nations, it won't be one that they give up easy. But really interesting to get your insight on everything. Thank you so much, Adrian, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Anytime, of course.
Thank you, Adrian. And before we go, a few other small things. I have been following a lot of the Bundesliga for obvious reasons, as now I'm commentating, spending my Sunday evenings with the Bundesliga. And we talked a little bit about Kiel earlier, but for me, the thing that stands out with the Bundesliga so far is that it's 4 teams that are unbeaten still after 5 rounds and seem to be kind of streaking away at the top. It's Kiel, Rhein-Neckar Leuven, and Magdeburg with perfect winning records. Berlin drew 1 game with Flensburg. Besides that, have won the rest of them. And it's very much a case of the league being split into 2 already, with Flensburg just behind them, having lost to Rhein-Neckar Leuven. I don't know if you've been following much of the Bundesliga so far.
I've been following the results, and I think probably the biggest surprise, I think, for a lot of people has been the revival of Rhein-Neckar Leuven through Sebastian Heinze, who's their new head coach there, Seppel, as I call him by his nickname. And I think that's been, the Rhein-Neckar Leuven result over Flensburg, I think, was a shock for most people. I don't know, were you shocked by that? I think that's...
Well,
People didn't expect that.
I was mostly shocked to hear that it was the first time they've won at home against Flensburg in 5 years, which is that's a long, painful run for them. And yeah, I was watching some of that game, and Flensburg had a great chance right at the end to draw level, which would have been another dramatic draw for them against a big team. But a big save from Joel Bierlehm, who was like their third choice goalkeeper, he had a bit of a breakthrough match. And yeah, I mean they haven't signed too many players. I mean I think the big signing for them was Halil Jaganjac, who's come in from Kielce. But besides that, it's kind of them resetting a little bit because they had such a bad season last season. So to see them top of the table with a perfect record, that is a surprise for me. Yeah.
Their opening match, I think, against Melzigen was where they really put the marker down there against our favourite moneybag team, Melzigen, who haven't had the best start, sitting down in 11th place. So I think, knowing how they do business, they'll have their head coach kicked out before the midway point.
Yeah, well, we've already had one coach sacked already. That just happened. Stuttgart's coach, Rory Sanchez, has been given the... What are you given? You're given the
proverbial boot.
Given the proverbial boot after losing all of their games. A bit of a surprise that they've had such a bad start to the season. We talked with Rasmus a couple of weeks ago after they signed Oscar Bergendahl, like whether he could help them kind of take the next step. Also brought in Silvio Heinefetter. It just hasn't worked out for them so far. But a team that has come up from the second Bundesliga, who are flying, is Gummersbach. Old Gummersbach, coached by Gudjon Valle Sigurdsson. They've got 4 wins out of 5, only losing to Magdeburg so far. So a really nice start to the season for them. And yeah, I think it's turning out to be an interesting season already. And for the first time, and this is something that people have complained a lot about over the years, that you couldn't watch the games. People have complained about it. We've complained about it. But now, around the world, you can watch it on HBL TV. And every now and then, I'll be there with you on a Sunday afternoon, commentating from home. Just like I am here, the same spot. It's magical.
That's lovely. Do you notice any difference between commentating the Bundesliga versus the Champions League or Euro?
So far, not really. I think, the teams I've covered, it's either been Magdeburg or Kiel or both of them in every game so far. A lot of familiar faces. It's nice to see seeing some kind of random blasts from the past as well. Hanover Kiel was a good game on Sunday, also because Hanover have built a very nice squad as well. They brought in Branko Vujovic and Vladislav Kuleš from Kielce. Annoyingly, Kuleš was only used for like 5 seconds. He scored 2 goals, and then you wonder, like, why isn't he being used the rest of the time? Yeah, I think it'll be good to see these big contests and nice to be able to commentate on them, because often I found with the Bundesliga, the big games have kind of just snuck up on me, and you see they're happening, and then it's like, it's too late, or it's already halfway gone. So I'm keeping more of an eye on it proactively instead of reactively this season. So that's nice to do. And I think, with the title race being a bit more open than it's been for a long time, I reckon.
Yeah, I reckon so. And as you said about Gummersbach earlier, I think Gummersbach need to be in the Bundesliga, don't they? So it's great to have them back. I mean, you always want the teams that you grew up watching the Bundesliga to be back in the Bundesliga. And Gummersbach losing by 2 goals to Magdeburg and win all the other 4 games, I think is a good sign for them. But talking about Magdeburg, I'll be going there this week now to watch match of the week, Magdeburg versus PSG, which should be a really great game, I think. And it's probably the first ever match of the week in Magdeburg.
Yeah, will be.
Because it's been, what?
I think 17 seasons.
17 seasons. Since, yeah, so it'll be, I think, a special night, I'd like to think, because the Champions League, I think, in comparison to maybe other German clubs, I think it holds a bit more of a special place for Magdeburg.
Oh, yeah.
Than some of the other clubs who I will not name maybe got a bit tired of playing Champions League handball in seasons gone by. But yeah, looking forward to that. That should be a good one.
Yeah, and a return for Yannick Grain already against the sub team. So yeah, fun times. Besides that, I've just got a couple other small things. A lot of injuries happening at the moment. So we were talking about the Women's Euro. Melanie Nokandi won't be in the Women's Euro, which is sad to see. She's hurt her left knee. Stina Oftedal has fractured her nose. Seems like something she does every few weeks. But she should be back in no time. Not so good news for Sven Erik from Kiel, their young right wing. He's out now, basically for the rest of the season. He's ruptured his ACL. So I wonder, Bevan Calvert, is he going to get another call up? Is he ready? Is he ready for it? And seeing as the men's Euro qualifiers are coming up next month, and I think we'll talk about that as we get closer to it, because it's going to be a interesting qualifying campaign. They won't have Elias Elfsson-Eskepagotu, who has, we spoke about him, where his future may lie. He is indeed going to Kiel, as I think you and Alex predicted. For the young Faroese boys, he's going there next season, but he's out until February, as I think he's getting a precautionary knee surgery, so something that he's been struggling with for a while. So I think they're just going to try and take care of that and have him ready for the important part of the season. But that's a blow for Sevahof in their hopes to progress in Europe, and for Faroe Islands as they hope to qualify for the Euro 2024. Your favourite competition, and mine, Brian, the Men's European League, is going to be 32 teams in the group phase from next season. What do you think of that?
That is a lot.
It's a lot of European League.
That's a lot of European League. I mean, I do like working on Tuesday nights, but I'm not sure if I like working with 32 teams on a Tuesday night. But it is a lot, but we'll see. I mean, yeah, I do like the European League. It's raw, it's dirty, and maybe the more the merrier. We'll see. Yeah,
it's an interesting one, opening it up like that. I think it's going to be 8 groups of 4, and then the top 2 go through to like a main round. And then it's like 4 groups of 4, then quarterfinals. So it'd just be like an elongated group phase with more, or the same amount of games, actually 10 games, in the group phase and the main round, but just more teams involved. So yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I don't know if they should all be on Tuesday. I don't think that's decided yet. Maybe Monday, Tuesday is the way it'll have to go to make that work, because it's a lot of games. 16 in one night is a bit too much to deal with. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, where can we hear you on the mic next then? What's your next outing?
It's Sunday. I don't do the Champions League this week. It's going to be one of the other lads taking the mic for Magdeburg and PSG. But I've got a classic in the Bundesliga, a modern classic. MT Melsungen against Fuchser Berlin. So that's a fun one. I'm looking forward to that. Can Melsungen prove us all wrong, or will they just get their ass kicked by Fuchser Berlin and by young Matthias Gietzel? I think it'll be the latter.
I think we'll leave it there for today. Well, we thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. It's good to be back. It's good to be watching handball, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.